On this paper, let me share a couple of things and then we'll get to the message. In Psalm 85:10, he uses the word mercy. Now, mercy is the acknowledgement of our need, and it includes the knowing that he has the full supply to meet our need. That is pardon, cleansing, atonement, reconciliation, and restitution. He meets that need in or by truth. The result is righteousness and peace. And it says that those have kissed. In the Bible, it says have kissed each other, but the each other is not in the original text. It is clear that it simply says that they have kissed. Well, the word kissed literally means attached. It's a very unusual word there. Thus, by that kiss, he makes us acceptable in his sight. And some other things on that page for you to look at, but I wanted to read that part to you. Now turn, if you will, to Joshua chapter 2 for our message tonight. And I read in Joshua chapter 2, verse 1, and Joshua, the son of Nun, was out of Shittim. He sent 2 men to secretly spy, and they came into an harlot's house named Rahab. And in verse 3, the king of Jericho finds out that there's some men in her house, and he's out to find out who they are and says, bring them here. Well, she doesn't do that, and she hides them. And turn to chapter 6 now. And God says to Joshua, now, the city's accursed. Now, what he's saying, total destruction, except Rahab. And if you keep anything for yourselves, then you're accursed. You see that in Achan a little later. And so Joshua says, verse 22, to the 2 men that spied the city out, go into the harlot's house. I want you to look at this. Bring her and all that she has, as you promised. And so they went. They burnt the city. But verse 25, Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, her father's household, all that she had. And she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day. Rahab literally means full of pride. Well, the background also includes, as a harlot, lewd. This is a long, long definition. Cruel, no mercy, full of malice, unjust, excessive, undisciplined, waste, no motive, unrestrained, no regard for what is right. Now look back at chapter 2 and verse 11. This one who was so full of pride, who had no regard for what was right, no mercy, full of malice, undisciplined, and all the rest. Verse 11, as soon as we heard these things, and the things that she's saying, what God did for them, not what they did for God, what God did for them. Our hearts didn't melt. Neither did there remain any more courage because of you. For the Lord your God, He's God in heaven above and in earth beneath. In Hebrews chapter 11, it says, and you don't need to turn there, it's in your outline, that Rahab perished not with the unbelievers. I want you to look back at verses 10 and 11 in chapter 2. The whole city was scared in their boots because they knew what God did for the children of Israel. Only Rahab was broken. Only Rahab was broken. Roman numeral 1. She was a harlot. That is, she was just like you. Now you're going to see before this story's over, the only one he saved out of Jericho was a whore. And that's what we all were outside of Christ. We prostituted ourselves to false gods. Secondly, again remembering verses 10 and 11, she protected the spies. In the process, well, I watch this like an eagle in this church with your children. There's something about God giving His people a respect for the oversight. And if there's no respect for the oversight, there's trouble. Every time. She protected the spies, showed that she had respect for the oversight that God sent there. And Roman numeral 3, we're going to take a look at her testimony. And you're going to see this starting in verse 9 of chapter 2. She said to the men while they were still there, I know God's given you the land. Your terror's fallen on everybody in this city. Everybody is fainting because of you. And you read this scripture right, even the king. We know how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. Can you imagine living in Illinois and the Mississippi River simply parting back? Everybody'd know it. Everybody in Jericho knew that river parted. You want the rest of the story? And all the Jews went through on dry land. That's not possible, except a miracle of God. We also know what you did to the two kings, the Amorites. You killed them. And verse 11, when we heard these things, nobody in Jericho had any more strength or courage because of you, for the Lord your God. So she tells these men, we know that God has given you this land. We know he's protected you all the way out of Egypt. Now, let's do a little rehearsing. When the Jews got ready to come out of Egypt, every woman who was a slave, Jew was a slave, every Jew in there was a slave, went to her mistress's house and said, "This is really funny. I want all your jewels and I want all your gold." They gave it to him. And what's funnier than that, women, they said, "We want all your mirrors." And they gave him that too. I can't imagine a woman giving up a mirror. And you think Jericho didn't know that? Every Jew took every jewel and every bit of gold from Egypt. Continuing the story. They get to the Red Sea, and every Egyptian soldier dies. None left. Egypt now is a country of little kids and women. All the fighting men are dead. You think Jericho didn't know that? You bet your boots it did. That's why she said we lost all our strength. Well, if we know what your God can do, we'll witness to it, we saw. Please look at verse 12. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I've showed you kindness, that you'll also show me a kindness and show me a true token. Now that token going on in the story is a scarlet thread to hang out the window, a picture of the blood of Christ. All her desire was to be under the protection of the blood of God, for there's no other protection possible. And so the promise was given, Roman numeral 4 in your outline, and that is, she let them down through the cord, to the window by cord. And they said, now, we're blameless if you don't tie this scarlet thread to show your house, to show your trust, to show your protection. So she ties that scarlet thread. And protected under the blood of Christ. Now, parents, I want to talk to you for a moment. While your children are still children in your house, they're protected under that promise. Now, you prove to me something else out of this story, and I'll eat my hat. But I won't have to. For he says, verse 18, when we come to the land, you bind this scarlet thread. You bring your father, your mother, your brethren, all of your father's household unto you in this house, under the blood. Whoever goes out, his blood's on his own head. We're guiltless. They're in that house, under the blood, they're safe. And so she said in verse 21, that's a covenant between us. Your word's right. She bound the scarlet thread as soon as they departed. She didn't wait for him to come back. Right then, under the blood. And turn to chapter 6 now. Long and a beautiful story, but look at verse 17. Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are in the house with her, because she hid the messengers. Verse 25. Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive. All her father's household, all that she had. And she dwelt in Israel even unto this day. And so Rahab was saved alive. Now let me come to an application for you to think about, will you? In Jericho and anywhere else, only harlots are saved. Now, a harlot is one with no mercy, etc., etc. It's what we all were. You can see that in Romans chapter 3. True harlots see God as over all. That's what Rahab did. True harlots seek protection. True harlots live under the scarlet thread, the blood of Christ. True harlots are safe. So that brings me to this question. How do you see yourself? The harlots were the only ones saved. Do you get the point? One addendum. In the Gospel of John, Jesus is praying, and he says that the world may believe. And a couple of verses later, he says that the world may know. Says your testimony, and that's what happened here. The testimony of those spies, ministers of God, brought to Jericho for one to believe and for one to know. Your testimony will do the same. It just will. Take it to heart.